If you handed a prehistoric human a steak tartare menu, would he call it fine dining or just Tuesday? Imagine dinner before ovens, before recipes, before someone proudly said, "I make a great barbecue sauce. There is no kitchen, there is no fridge, there is no polite little timer that says your food is ready. There is just hunger, sharp stones, nervous eyes. And maybe a very suspicious piece of meat lying near a very suspicious lion." So why did prehistoric humans eat raw meat? The simple answer sounds obvious, because they had no choice. But the real answer is stranger, messier, and much more human. For a long time, our ancestors lived in a world where food did not come with labels, expiration dates, or friendly cooking instructions. Food was not a lifestyle. Food was a negotiation with nature. Sometimes nature offered fruit, sometimes it offered roots, sometimes it offered insects, eggs, nuts, or shellfish. And sometimes, if the timing was lucky and the predators were not too close, nature offered meat. That meat might come from hunting, it might come from scavenging. It might come from finding the leftovers of a much scarier animal that had already done the hard part. To us, that sounds risky. To them, it sounded like calories, and calories were not a small thing. Calories were warmth. Calories were walking. Calories were thinking. Calories were staying alive long enough to see another sunrise. This is the first broken belief. Prehistoric humans were not eating raw meat because they were trying to look wild. They were not doing an ancient food challenge. They were not saying, "This raw diet will make me more primal." They were trying not to die. A modern person may look at raw meat and think, "That needs a grill." An ancient human may have looked at raw meat and thought, "That could get me through the day." That difference matters, because in the prehistoric world, hunger was often more dangerous than bad taste. Meat brought protein, it brought fat, it brought energy, and marrow inside bones was like hidden treasure in a very annoying container. You could not open it with a fork. You could not ask the waiter for help. You had to smash it with a rock, and that is where the story becomes interesting. Early humans and their relatives learned that stone tools could change what food was possible. A sharp stone flake could cut meat from bone. A heavy hammerstone could crack open bones. A simple rock could become a knife. A bone could become a lunchbox. And suddenly, a creature without claws, without giant teeth, and without the strength of a lion had a new advantage. Tools. This was not elegant. Nobody was arranging mammoth ribs with a tiny leaf garnish. Nobody was saying, "The texture is bold, but the presentation lacks confidence." It was rough, it was noisy, it was probably smelly, but it worked. Before reliable cooking, raw meat was not a strange luxury. It was one part of a survival menu, and that menu was much bigger than people imagine. Our ancestors were not walking around eating only raw steak like confused gym influencers. They ate whatever the environment offered: plants, fruit, seeds, tubers, insects, eggs, small animals, shellfish when available, and sometimes meat and marrow from larger animals. The mystery is not that ancient humans ate raw meat. Many animals eat raw meat. The real mystery is this: how did a slow, soft, not very clawed primate compete in a world filled with professional meat experts? Lions had claws, hyenas had crushing jaws, vultures had patience and absolutely no table manners, big cats had speed, wolves had packs, crocodiles had the unfair advantage of looking like floating logs with teeth. Early humans had something different. They had hands, they had memory, they had social learning, they had teamwork, and eventually, they had tools that made their small bodies much more powerful. One person could cut, another could watch for danger, another could carry stones, another could remember where food was found before. A group could do what one individual could not. That is a huge step, because raw meat was not just food, it was a problem to solve. How fresh is it? Is a predator coming back? Can the group protect the food? Which parts are worth taking? Can the bones be cracked? Can the meat be carried? Can it be shared before it spoils? Every meal was a tiny survival puzzle, and sometimes the puzzle had teeth. Of course, raw meat was risky. Raw meat can carry parasites and bacteria. Old meat can make a body very unhappy. And in prehistoric life, a stomach problem was not just embarrassing, it could be fatal. There was no pharmacy, no emergency room, no person saying, "Drink water and rest." There was only the group, the landscape, and whatever your body could survive. So early humans likely learned through painful experience. Fresh meat was better than rotten meat. Some smells were warnings. Some parts were safer or more useful. Bones could hide rich marrow. Predators could return, and if a carcass smelled like death had written a diary, maybe do not make it dinner. This was science without lab coats, science with consequences. Nobody was writing a research paper, but the group was collecting information. One person got sick. Another avoided the same mistake. One person found marrow. Others copied the method. One person learned where predators left leftovers. Others remembered the place. This is how survival knowledge grows. Not as a lecture, as a pattern, as a warning, as a habit, as a story told by action. Then came the great plot twist, fire. But not like a movie scene. Probably not one magical evening where a heroic caveman raised a burning stick and shouted, "Behold soup." The control of fire was probably a long and uneven process. Sometimes fire came from lightning. Sometimes it had to be kept alive. Sometimes it was lost. Sometimes it was feared. Sometimes it was useful, and eventually it became one of the most important tools humans ever learned to control. Because fire changed food. Cooked meat is softer. It is easier to chew. It can be easier to digest. It can kill many dangerous microbes, and it can make more energy available from the same food. That is a massive deal, because the human body is expensive to run, especially the brain. Your brain is basically a wrinkled little energy monster sitting inside your skull, demanding snacks while pretending to be wise. It weighs only a small part of your body, but it consumes a surprising amount of energy. So for early humans, getting more usable energy from food could matter a lot. Cooking was not just flavor. Cooking was technology. It turned tough food into softer food. It turned dangerous food into safer food. It turned long chewing into shorter meals. It turned survival into efficiency, and efficiency matters when life is hard. If you spend less time chewing, you can spend more time watching for predators. If food gives you more energy, you can travel farther. If cooked food is easier for children and older group members to eat, more people can benefit. And if fire keeps animals away at night, the camp becomes more than a place to eat. It becomes a place to gather. Around fire, humans could share food. They could watch each other. They could learn. They could rest. They could form stronger bonds. They could make gestures, sounds, routines, and eventually stories. Maybe before stories became words like ours. Food already had a social meaning. A raw piece of meat says, "Do not starve." A cooked meal says, "Stay with us." That is the cognitive twist. The real story is not that prehistoric humans loved raw meat. The real story is that raw meat was part of a bridge. On one side was pure survival. On the other side was culture. Stone tools helped build the first part of that bridge. Teamwork made it stronger. Fire widened it. Cooking turned it into a road, and we are still walking on that road today. Think about modern life. We say we are advanced. We have kitchens, supermarkets, refrigerators, delivery apps, microwaves, air fryers, and tiny packets of sauce that somehow survive longer than empires. But deep inside, our food instincts are ancient. We still chase high-energy food. We still love fat. We still love sweetness. We still prefer food that is soft, easy, warm, and quick. We still gather around food to bond. We still celebrate with meals. We still panic when the fridge is empty, even though the grocery store is 5 minutes away. That panic is not logical. It is old. It comes from a brain shaped by scarcity. A brain that remembers one rule: find energy before energy finds someone else. Our ancestors had to fight a bone with a rock. We fight a microwave button that says add 30 seconds, and somehow we still complain. But maybe that is the point. Modern food did not erase ancient survival instincts. It decorated them. We added tables, we added menus, we added sauces, we added names that sound fancy. We turned hunger into cuisine. We turned survival into culture. We turned calories into identity. So when you picture prehistoric humans eating raw meat, do not just see something primitive. See a problem being solved. See a hungry animal becoming a toolmaker. See small hands turning stones into power. See a group learning what was safe, what was useful, and what was worth the risk. See the long road from raw meat to roasted meat, from scavenging to sharing, from eating quickly to gathering together, from survival to society. Because dinner was never just dinner. It was memory, it was danger, it was cooperation, it was learning, it was evolution with a smell. And maybe the strangest part is not that ancient humans once ate raw meat. Maybe the strangest part is that we still carry the same ancient food brain inside us. We just gave it better lighting. So what do you think? If a prehistoric human saw our modern food world, would he think we became smarter or just turned survival into an all-you-can-eat buffet?